Moving eastwards, we come to Cibatu, which lies at a considerable elevation in the mountains, and was justly known as the Malay capital of the world. The articulated Malay design had found much favour in the United States of America, but large examples had never been very plentiful elsewhere. The design was mainly aimed at freight work, and their rarity was enhanced in Java since they were also deployed on passenger duties. In July 1973, an example of the 2660 tank variety, CC 1023, moves off the shed to work a train up the steeply graded line to Cikajang, although for much of the time this service seemed to terminate at Garut, about halfway up the branch. 34 of these engines were built, this one by Werkspoor of Amsterdam in 1910. A visit in 1982 revealed a very different aspect at Cibatu. A volcano some tens of miles away had erupted, covering the whole area with grey volcanic dust. Nearer to the volcano, considerable damage to people and property had occurred. Shunting in this rather unpleasant situation is 260 tank C1116, built in 1883 by Hartmann of Chemnitz. The blue livery was almost certainly applied locally, the official colour being black. These engines were distributed widely across Java, and the earliest ones built were the oldest engines still in service. They were externally similar to the C12 class, except that the latter were compounds. There were also detailed differences between members of the same class. For example, some had extended smoke boxes, such as seen here on number C1116. Their most frequent work was to act as shed or station pilots. As the tank goes onto the depot, the fireman proudly points to the works plate, still in place. 2 CC-10s are standing idle outside the shed, and these were seen less frequently on the Garut line than the tender Malays, although some examples lasted almost to the end of steam at Cibatu. The preferred engines for the Garut service were the CC-50 class 2660 Malays. 30 of these were built in 1927 and 1928 by SLM of Winterthur, Switzerland, and Werkspoor, Amsterdam. On this occasion, CC-5024 was the nominated engine, and is seen being lit up on the depot. Being oil-fired, it would take far less time to raise steam than an equivalent coal or wood burner, although raising steam too quickly was never advisable because of the additional stresses created. This engine had the luxury of possessing 2 water gauges, unlike most engines on the system, which had to make do with one plus a test cock. These were true Malays in the sense that they were compounds. The difference in diameters between the high-pressure cylinders to the rear and the low-pressure ones at the front can be clearly seen as the engine leaves the shed and backs past the camera. Also visible is the arrangement giving some support to the boiler beneath the forward truck, the former being cantilevered forward to some extent from the fixed framing supported by the rear set of driving wheels. By the mid-1970s, these were certainly the only mainline Malays left anywhere in the world in normal service, and although it was a constant battle to keep at least 1 or 2 of the complicated machines in working order, Cibatu became one of the last centres on Java to see steam in operation, finally succumbing in September 1984. In addition to working the branch, they also work local mixed trains along the main line, but it will be for their work on the Cikajang line that they will be remembered by enthusiasts. The same engine is next seen working a Garut branch train across one of the many bridges on this steep and spectacular branch. Garut is a fair-sized town, and one probable reason for the line's survival was the existence of an oil depot serving the locality. As previously mentioned, the line onwards to Cikajang was often without a service and is believed to have been eventually abandoned, although lines which had the appearance of being disused frequently had a habit of springing back to life on a later visit. Many trains were mixed, with the dubious habit of mixing oil tanks with passenger vehicles, although on this occasion the train consisted of 2 wooden coaches only. The branch timetable varied with some regularity, perhaps depending on the number of locos being available for traffic, a phenomenon found elsewhere on Java. In the early 1980s, 4 return trains per day were scheduled between Cibatu and Garut, while at the other extreme, on certain occasions, some visitors found no trains running at all, due to the absence of any serviceable engines. Despite the almost ludicrous aspect of such a large locomotive hauling only 2 small coaches, the combination of the grades and the desperate mechanical condition of the engine probably meant that it would have been unable to haul a much longer train. The slow speed was also indicative of the mechanical well-being of the engine, although branch line speeds were almost universally low throughout the system because the tracks were so lightly laid. The Malay is seen approaching Garut in another street scene, having collected 2 vans somewhere en route. The effects of the volcanic eruption are still more than evident, showing how a vast area was affected. After a quick turnaround, CC 5024 sets off tender first back towards Cibatu. Views from the leading balcony of the engine in motion give glimpses of the leading truck moving laterally in relation to the boiler. Thankfully, one of these rare locomotives has been brought back to Europe, and a Dutch-built example now resides in the Railway Museum at Utrecht. Returning to Cibatu, a visit in July 1973 found one of the very last examples of one of the larger Malay classes being prepared to take a freight train eastwards to Tasikmalaya. DD 5203 was one of only 2 examples remaining in service out of 10 built in Holland and Germany in 1923 and 1924. These were 2880 compounds, and although they were built to a narrower gauge, they at least gave a hint of what the giants in the United States had been like in service. 1973 was their final year in action, and although their mechanical condition was appalling, they nevertheless made an impressive sight as the largest Malays remaining anywhere in the world in everyday use. DD 5203 is seen between Cibatu and Tasikmalaya on what could have been one of the final workings of its class, since very few movements were reported after this date.